Pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Godfrey McAllister. Godfrey is a motivational speaker, author, consumer advocate, mediator, and chartered financial consultant. Among his many insurance industry distinctions, he is a past member of the ultimately prestigious Top of the Table, pinnacle of the International $1 Million Roundtable. He was also American Life Insurance Company #1 worldwide personal accident insurance sales producer for 7 consecutive years, each year breaking his own record. He's the first distinguished Toastmaster in the Caribbean. Godfrey is a Toastmasters International 4-time multi-district table topics champion and a 2017 World Champion of Public Speaking finalist. Distinguished Toastmaster McAllister is the conceptualizer and international coordinator of the increasingly popular and recently concluded worldwide impromptu speaking extravaganza, aka WISE. WISE is dedicated to the teaching, training, and honing of impromptu and persuasive thinking and speaking skills. You may wonder how we managed to get Godfrey to be our keynote speaker. When I was communicating with him about the WISE event, he made the mistake of saying in an email, "If there's anything I can do to help your district." We immediately jumped on that and said, well, yes, as a matter of fact, there is. And we're very pleased he was able to be here today. Dr. McAllister's trademarked name and mantra are Dr. Perspective, and the only thing over which you have complete control is your perspective. Please unmute yourself. I'm going to wait for a second while I see people unmute themselves. Okay, we've got quite a few people unmuted. So I would ask you to give a warm, loud District 45 welcome to our keynote speaker, distinguished Toastmaster, Dr. Godfrey McAllister.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to the amazing Heather Perkins. A round of applause for her. Come on, she is our district director. We are going to embark on a journey, a speed journey, and I'm going to reserve the right to go as fast as I can because a distinguished Toastmaster and District Director Heather Perkins said to me, "Do I have your permission to record?" And I said, yes. Which means that you have all the time in the world to go through at your own pace. What I want to make sure, by the grace of God, is that I manage to get through so that we can have some questions at the end, because that's when the learning really takes place, during the question and answer session. Your topic is focus on success. My topic within your theme is focus on your success. And somewhere towards the last third of the presentation, I'll be focusing on the communication component. Ladies and gentlemen, let the show begin. Focus. The first part of your topic is focus. Now, look at that diagram. Look at that visual. Look at that graphic, and you know what focus is. You can see focus. The other words you can't see. Are there other words? Of course there are other words. You just can't see them. Why? Because they are out of focus. So focus brings, among other things, clarity. Ladies and gentlemen, take another look. There's an auditorium filled with people. What are you seeing? One thing alone, the microphone. Why? Because the photographer opted to put that in focus. And of course, you know about the photographers versus the photo take-outerers. All right. The photo take-outerers have one of these point and shoot, you know. Click, 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 click. Thank God for them. But if you want to get a real professional shot, you're not going to be using an autofocus camera. You'll be using what? A manual focus camera. So you can isolate what you want to concentrate on and put everything else into the background. Ladies and gentlemen, A Man in the Mirror. In my first book, many decades ago, the book is called You've Got All It Takes to Succeed. And the very first chapter was The Man in the Mirror. And the next chapter was The Man Next Door. And the significance of that is that I discovered that the man next door was very similar to the man in the mirror. And that may help you with some of your interpersonal confrontation challenges. Focus on your success. We're now at the word year. We looked at focus. Now we're looking at the word year. Ladies and gentlemen, I remember giving a keynote in Barbados many decades ago. Yes, I'm over 100 years old, of course. Many decades ago. And I was the top presenter. I was the $1 million round table, this, that. Oh, I was a phenomenal. And they invited me to speak because I was a phenomenal salesman. And I went on stage and I started to speak and tell them about the great things I'd done. And everybody was, okay. And I said, God, something is wrong. I'm not bonding with my audience. They're not receiving me the way I want them to receive me. God says, tell them about your failures. And I switched my presentation and I started to talk about my failures and my defeats and the trials and the troubles that I had. And almost immediately, everybody leaned in and we became as one. And when we became as one, I was able to take them through my crucifixion. I was able to take them into the grave when I was buried. But because they were now with me, I was able to take them on the resurrection day, which in my case happened 3 years later. And there was a standing ovation and the people were excited. It was pandemonium because I'd taken the time for them to identify with me. Trust me, we are not different. Very similar. So focus on your success. Don't focus on somebody else's success. You don't want to know about my success. Trust me. You are here to hear how you can be more successful. And that's something that we must never lose sight of. Some will always be more successful than you. Duh. I don't know what the age group is here, but duh is what the young people say, okay? Duh. As if to say, isn't that obvious? Yeah, some will always be more successful than you. And guess what? News alert, some will always be less successful than you are. But there will always be only one you. And so the focus must be on your success. Compare yourself with only two persons. Only two persons in the world are worthy of your comparison. Can anybody tell me who those two people are?
Who you were in the past and who you're going to be in the future.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, who was that spoke a while ago?
Andrew Chadbourne. Okay,
I'm gonna retire now, and Andrew will continue the rest of this presentation. Thank you, Andrew.
No.
All right, the person you used to be and the person you want to be. The person you used to be and the person you want to be. Make generous use of life's many mirrors. In 2017, when I qualified for the finals of the Toastmasters International Speech Contest, my semi-final winning speech was, "What do you see?" And I have what is now an infamous picture of having one mirror in my hand, and then I magically split that mirror into two mirrors because of the importance of self-examination. Look in the mirror. Yes, you may like what you see. Sometimes you don't like what you see. Take a look at those pictures. But remember, if you don't like what you see, don't break the mirror. If you break the mirror, you still will be who the mirror said you were, plus one mirror poorer. So we looked at focus, we looked at year. Now we are going to look at success. Yay! That should be easy. Or will it be? What is success? Even the baby needs to get an answer to that question. What is success? All right, come on. Driving a brand new Mercedes-Benz, of course, that's success. Yeah, for some people. Living in a mansion is success. Graduating is success. Giving birth to a newborn baby is success. Having a wonderful family, three generations. Oh, that's success. Not to mention the little guy in the corner, $1.379 million in the bank account with all bills paid. Hey, that's success. Well, anything you say is success is success. Let me repeat that again. Anything that you say is success is success. But beware. Anything that can be anything can also easily be nothing. Anything that can be anything can also easily be nothing. Beware. Success is the consequence of succeed. And the dictionary agrees with us. If you go to the dictionary, you will have to come across succeed before you come across success. Unless I need to go back to grammar school. So success is the consequence of succeed. Succeed is a consequence of try. Try and try again, you'll succeed at last. We've all heard that, right? If you don't try, you'll not succeed. And whatever you do, regardless of the trials, regardless of the problems, regardless of what comes against you, for God's sake, well, not for God's sake, he doesn't have any problem. For your sake, don't quit. Keep on trying. Try in a variety of ways. Try different approaches. Don't qualify to be called insane. If you try one way and you keep on getting failure, don't keep on doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, hoping that magically one day you will get a different result. That's the definition of insanity. Keep on trying. Keep on trying. Keep on trying. But since try is so important, we need to take a deep dive into the anatomy of try. And I say try should be driven by desire. And many, many years ago, oh yes, many years ago, I was going through a bit of introspection and I wanted to define desire. I went to the English dictionary. Dictionaries could not find a definition of desire. I went to the dictionary of psychology, could not find a definition of desire. Eventually I said, God, I need to define desire. And I gave him all the credit. He gave me this definition. To desire something is not merely to want it. To desire something is not merely to wish you had it. To desire something is not merely to like the idea of having that thing. To desire something is to become totally and completely obsessed with the thought of having that thing to the point that you are convinced that it is attainable, and to the point that you believe that you will attain it. And as a result, you consciously and subconsciously unleash all your mental, physical, social, emotional, and spiritual faculties and resources in the relentless pursuit of the materialization of the object of your desire. Desire, therefore, is not a passive word. Desire is not a feeble expression of interest. Rather, desire is the starting point of all achievement and the one ingredient without which our lives will forever be marred by the morass of mediocrity. So, the object of your desire must be your set goal. Now, notice that I will be talking about goal and not goals. Because the bottom line is that, now I know that women have a little special gift here, but I tend to be sort of one at a time goal. Granted, you have some goals that overlap, but in terms of focus, unless I am wrong, you cannot focus on two things at the same time. The meaning of the word focus implies, suggests, determines, dictates that you focus on one thing, as we have seen in our previous slides. So the object of your desire must be your set goal. The object of your desire must be identifiable. If you don't know what you want, don't ask me. If you don't know what you want to achieve, please don't ask me. You have got to identify what it is you want. The object of your desire must be identifiable. Your set goal must be measurable. Now, Andrew is probably saying, well, I think the next thing he's going to say is that it must be attainable. And I'm not going to say that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to say that. Because you see, I have a little problem with that. We tend to define or describe things that are attainable by the out-of-date definition. That which has already been attained. And so it makes no allowance for new inventions. It makes no allowance for good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good gets better and your better gets best. No. For what may not be attainable for you may be attainable for me. I just completed the worldwide impromptu speaking extravaganza. And all that I will say on this platform is that for the average mortal, it would not have been attainable. And we leave it at that. But some of us, and I believe all of us, have the God-given ability to rise above our circumstances, to meet any challenge that faces us. And we can reach deep within, and we can pull out that reserve of determination, of energy, of dedication, of commitment, and we can beat almost any foe, and we can surmount almost any obstacle. So, in my definition, everything is attainable. One of my mantras is, whatever you consciously conceive and ardently believe, you will inevitably achieve. Of course, you know, and I'm getting back now into the conventional rhythm, it must be time constrained. I am going to finish high school. We don't want to hear in 10 years' time. That's too long. I'm going to become a DTM. I just joined Toastmasters. And I'm going to become a DTM in the next 6 years. Too long. I did it in 1 year, but I don't recommend anybody to even try that. But I would certainly say, aim for 2. You miss 2, definitely nail it in 3. Toastmasters International couldn't care how long you take. And you know why? Because each year you got to pay those dues, right? Oh, yes. So if you want to take 10 years, go ahead. Go ahead. They have no problem with that. But if you want to get the biggest bang for your buck and the highest return on your investment, get that DTM out of the way. Go for, I heard somebody being introduced today as a DTM2. And a DTM2 is not a definition of somebody who has nothing else to do. I can assure you of that. It is the definition of a dedicated and committed Toastmaster who realizes that one DTM will never exhaust all the resources that Toastmasters International offers. And so they go and they go and they keep on going so that they can grow, because every time they go, they realize that they are growing and they are growing. And the more they grow, they can share. And the more they share, the more they can positively impact the world. Goal setting must always be in this order. See, it's wanting to have a goal, but there's a little bit of work to be done with goal setting. The first point in goal setting must be your long-term goal. Now, I'm not going to take a lot of time on this. If anybody disagrees, you are wrong. Let's just cut a long story short, okay? Very democratic of me, right? Yeah, that's the first thing you do. You set your long-term goal. As far as you can see, as far as you can project, as far as you can imagine, that's your long-term goal. And then, after your long-term goal comes your short-term goal. Your short-term goal is the immediate goal. Depending on how long, let us say the long-term goal is 10 years, well, your short-term goal might be 1 year. Every situation has its own parameters. If your long-term goal is 5 years, your short-term goal might be 6 months. But the idea is that the short-term goal is one of your more immediately achievable steps. Your long-term goal is your end game. That's where you want to be. And by the way, long-term goal doesn't mean until the day you die. It means that in this period of your life, that is your goal. And then comes the medium-term goal. Isn't that brilliant? Yes. Looks slightly confusing, but no. Long first, short, and then medium. Because you see, once you have the short and the long in place, then you simply break up the space in between, put some markers, and then you can divide the journey into equal, or at least into increments that are attainable and achievable. So you say something is missing. What is missing? Give you 10 seconds to figure out what is missing. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. You see, I'm only getting to see Andrew on the timer. So when Andrew bites his nails, I figure, well, he's not too sure yet. Sorry, Andrew, I can't pick anybody else. I have to respect the time. I don't want to mess with the timer, okay? He may cut me short or something. So it's only Andrew that I have to play with, all right? Okay, our 10 seconds is gone. What is missing is the initial coordinate, where you are now. Ladies and gentlemen, that is very important. A lot of people try to begin where they are not. If I heard that there was a job for a 30-year-old man, and I began to apply for that job because I have the energy and the youthfulness of a 30-year-old, okay, all that might be true. But guess what? I'm not 30 years of age. And if 30 years of age is a prerequisite, then I am fooling myself. So we have to take a dose, if necessary, an overdose of reality therapy. Who am I? Where am I now? That's where you begin. You cannot begin yesterday. You cannot begin tomorrow. The only place you can begin is right where you are today. Regardless of what that place is, regardless of how you feel about yourself, regardless of whether you think you should have been there or should not have been there, it is where you are, and that's the only place that you can begin. So as you set your long-term goal 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, you throw that marker there, but you also put a marker down right where you are, and there's a straight line between where you are and where that long-term goal is. You put your subdivisions along the way, you get your short and your medium-term goals, and you cater for detours. If life was a straight line, uninterrupted, it would be nice, huh? But that's just not the case. So there'll be detours. But every time you make a detour, you keep your eye on that goal. So even if you have to detour, and you detour, and you detour, allow yourself to get a quick neck. Because what? Your body is turning, but your eye is on the goal. So that when you are finished deforming yourself, your eye is on the goal. It's easy for you to reconnect with your very important reality. Now we come to the communication component. The success communication model has two components. Yes, and we're I like to go from the profound and then come back to the ridiculous. But not ridiculous, but the simple. So everybody knows what the two communication, the two components of the success communication model is. Anybody want to test their knowledge? Open the microphone for 10 seconds. What are the two success communication model components?
Listening and speaking.
All right. Those are two. Yeah. Those are two. All right. And so, I'm going to include that in my next presentation. Those are quite right. But the ones I have in mind, the first must be intrapersonal communication. Intrapersonal communication. Did I make a mistake? No. Intrapersonal communication. What is that? This is where you get to talk to yourself. And some people say talking to yourself is a sign of madness. That's not true. It's only when you answer back. And even that's not true. Even that's not true. Have fun, talk to yourself. Feel free to listen to your spirit. It's going to take a whole day, which I don't have, so I wouldn't start it now. But please, we are not physical beings. We are spiritual beings in a changing physical body. You want to prove that in a very simple way? Go and get your picture when you were 10 years old. Get that picture now and tell me if you were the same person externally. But yet you are the same person. Therefore, your primary claim to humanity, to being who you are, to your individuality, cannot be your physical external expression. It must be your spirit, which doesn't change. And that's why if somebody loses a hand, loses a foot, loses all the extremities, that person does not change their name. It's only when they stop breathing. When the spirit, in other words, the spirit is wind, when the spirit leaves their body, then you can do anything with the carcass that's left behind. And also, we don't call it carcass, but who cares? Mean the same thing, right? Allow your mind to be stretched. I enjoyed working with those district table topics champions. They were all champions, 40 champions from all over the world. They came together, and one of them, I believe, is right in this Zoom call right now. Can I call your name, Sharon? Oops, I should have got your permission, sorry. Oh yes, they were all district table topics champions. And they thought that they had come to do table topics. So they brushed off their table topics and they got all ready and yeah, they come to do table topics. They come to do table topics. Well, you want to chat with Sharon, she'll tell you. She will tell you how that ended up. And what I saw those men and women being stretched. And some of them dropped out, which is to be understood, expected. Some of them complained. The model was too difficult. We had never done this before. Blah, 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 blah. But we persevered. And I saw those men and women stretch and grow and stretch and grow. And became a better version of themselves, as is commonly reported. Allow your mind to be stretched. Dream big dreams. It's just as cheap. Did I say cheap? Sorry. Just as cheap to dream a small dream as a big dream. Be in tune with your creator. After all, you are a production of your creator. I call mine God. Who or what do you call yours? So we looked at the first must be intrapersonal. The second must be interpersonal communication. During interpersonal communication, you create the environment for your desired goal. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give the illustration or the example of a farmer. You're planting a seed. Your idea is a seed. Everything begins with an idea. It germinates and it becomes something that is tangible, communicable, reachable. But it begins with an idea. And so, for a seed to grow into a fruit-bearing tree, there must be, one, a healthy living seed. In other words, if your idea is dead on arrival or dead before it arrives, don't expect a resurrection of the dead. I'm not saying that that can happen, but I don't specialize in that. I'm saying begin with a living, healthy seed, aka idea. Then an active planter. Now, you can have the best seed. You can have the best idea. You got to plant it. If you stay home because the rain is falling, or you stay home because the sun is shining, or you stay home because of who cares? You got to get out there in the field. You got to till the soil. You got to put that seed in the ground. You got to plant it. You have to do the same thing with your idea. But if you plant the seed, the healthy idea on stony ground, nothing much of consequence is going to happen. You must find fertile soil. Some people have heard that sometimes you have to leave the environment in which you grew to bloom. I will recommend this for everything else except your wife, and we can discuss that some other time. But I'll be honest enough to say, in extreme circumstances, you might even have to part with that relationship or your husband. But we try to keep those two as sacred as possible. And we'll put up with garbage and crap and all sort of things a little bit longer with the spouse than we will put up with it from a friend, okay? Yes. What is your environment? If your environment is toxic, if everybody around you negative, you want to get out. I don't care how long the friendship is. It is possible to outgrow a friendship. And when you find yourself in an environment in which you can no longer grow, you can no longer bloom, you can no longer dream and share your big dreams with others without them sniggering and laughing and trying to cow you down, when you find that situation, get out or die. Fertile soil, your controlled environment. Thank God we live in a world of noise, but we also have headphones, you know, and there are times that I need to put on my headphones, and I put on my headphones, and when I put on my headphones, the noise around me becomes irrelevant. I connect my headphone to my music, and I shut out the music around me. I shut out the noise around me, and I bask in the environment, in the ambience that I choose to create. You got to be in control. You got to be in control of your environment. Continued conditions conducive to growth. I just summarize all of that because you know the story of the farmer. Yes, you got a good seed. Yes, you plant it. Yes, you ensure that the environment is initially good, but then birds have a way of looking at what you're doing and they can dig up the seed and destroy it. Not to mention, sometimes there's too much sun. You gotta cover that young plant. Sometimes there's too much water. Make sure irrigation is adequate. And we can go on with the analogy of the farmer. You know it probably better than I do. The same thing applies to your ideas. You don't just plant it and leave it. You got to keep on going. You got to keep on going, keep on paying attention, because destruction is always just around the corner. It's not a one shot. It's a continued, almost way of life. Interpersonal communication is both verbal and non-verbal. That much we know, so we can move on. In both instances, you consciously communicate the fertilizer required to enrich the soil in which you have planted the seed. What is he saying? What I'm saying is that your environment, to a large extent, consists of people. just like you. Man in the mirror, almost like the man next door. Don't be fooled by the color of the skin or the girth or whatever. No. The man in the mirror is very similar to the man next door. Do unto others as you would have them what? Do unto you. In Jamaica, we say hand wash hand, make hand come clean. All right? Hand, wash hand, make hand come clean. Yeah, we leave off the S's sometimes, colloquial versions, right? Another saying is, one hand can't clap. Try clapping with one hand. It's kind of hard, unless you clap somebody, all right? Or clap something. But two hands can clap. And so the environment that I'm talking about is the fact that we all need somebody. No man is an island. No man stand alone. And yes, that applies to women too. And so it's important that we create the relationships from which we want to benefit. You say, hey, that's conniving. That's manipulating. That's selfishness. That's yuck. And I say yes to all of that. You call it what you want to call it. The Bible talks about a man who was being fired by his boss. And when the man realized that he was about to lose his job, he called all the creditors or the debtors. And he said, how much you owe the boss? They said, $1,000. He said, give me $500 and take a clean bill of health. And he cut everybody in half. Now, this was this was not honest. But yet, God commended him for being shrewd. So go read your Bible. It's not as straightforward as you think it is. God commended him for being a shrewd servant. And he made another comment which is not relevant right now. But the point is that we have got to set up relationships before we need them. Don't wait until you need somebody to befriend them. Don't wait to help somebody until you need help from them. Chances are it's too late at that point. So all of that is a part of fertilizing the environment in which you need your plant to succeed. Somebody will have to give you a nod of approval. Somebody will have to give you a helping hand. Well, the man you pass on the way down, or on your way up rather, might very well be the same man you pass on your way down. Be careful. The communication component, impromptu thin speaking. All right, so that's one of my many words. You're free to use it. Just say where you heard it first. Impromptu thin speaking equal impromptu thinking and impromptu speaking. Now, let's look at the pyramid as we do a crash course in impromptu thin speaking. The pyramid begins with, at the bottom as usual, broadest part of the pyramid is always at the bottom. Daily holistic preparation. Ladies and gentlemen, by holistic, I mean exactly that, holistic. By daily, I mean exactly that, I mean daily. And by preparation, I mean exactly that preparation. That's right. It's daily, not 1 hour per day. Daily, one could say hourly, minutely, daily holistic preparation. We're talking about impromptu speaking. We're talking about, yes, the table topics contest. You don't start to prepare for the table topics contest when you are waiting for the contest master to give you the subject. It's too late. You can only draw on what's already in your head. You can't draw on what's not in your head. So from now, daily, holistic. Holistic means physically, socially, mentally, emotionally, mentally, socially, spiritually. All the colors that you can think of. Prepare yourself holistically. Then after that comes validated self-confidence. You know, a lot of us can be very self-confident, but our self-confidence can be called into question by people who figure that, well, you know, he says he's good, but really, he's not even begin to be good. All right, it's good for you to have confidence in yourself, but you need to validate that confidence. So if I say I'm the best in something, I must have something to prove, to demonstrate, to validate what I feel about myself. Just having confidence in an illusion or in a wish or in an expectation or in an anticipation is not enough. validated self-confidence. And your friends and your enemies are the best validators. Sometimes your enemies are even better at validating you. Analytical observation. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a day of fake news. The pandemic, the COVID pandemic, I don't think has killed as many people as the pandemic of disinformation. I leave it at that. You either agree or you don't agree. But analytical, the time has come now where you hear, but you do not receive. You hear, you put it in the waiting room, the laboratory, you check it out before you receive it. If not, you would digest garbage. And if you digest garbage, well, you know what you'll become. So analytical observation. Observation is the start of the scientific process. Then you got to analyze what you have observed. Analyze it for yourself. Be critical. Not everything you hear is true. Not everything you see is true. Anybody ever heard of Photoshop? So if you say, well, I saw it, so therefore it's true, you're in a different century. And then, of course, there's clinical evaluation. And clinical evaluation means that you actually check it out. You test it out. Yes. Not everything you can test out, but you do the best you can. And if you are like me, you'll ask God to take care of what you can't do, but at least make an effort. You're living in a day of fake news. I want to call any nation, because I don't know who's in the audience, but nations from all over the world are invading other nations all over the world through cyber warfare. So when you think that what is being fed to you is being fed by your home people, it could be from a foreign hostile nation. That's the reality of what we're living in. Clinical evaluation. Impromptu thinking. Now, once you have gone through the process of clinical evaluation, then now you are able to think impromptu. You see, people talk about impromptu speaking, but there's a disaster that is waiting to happen when you begin to speak before you think. By a show of hands, does anybody know of anybody who speaks before they think? Yes, we don't feel, yeah, don't call any names, Andrew. Andrew, don't call her name, Andrew. Please, please, please. Yeah, we all know people who speak before they think, and usually it's not a good idea. Not a good idea. So you want to put your brain in motion before you put your mouth in gear. So the whole process of thinking, and I'm writing a book now on that whole shebang, but the whole idea of thoughts, we must control our thoughts. Sometimes it's difficult because of the bombardment that we receive from all over the world, sometimes even from with us, especially if you're schizophrenic. But the bottom line is that we have to take responsibility for our thoughts. The Bible says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And when you can think on your feet, then you are ready to speak. So when you go to the Toastmasters table topics contest, you go there with a blank mind, and they say with an empty head. Blank mind in terms of topic. You don't try to assume or guess or anticipate what the topic is going to be. You wait until you hear the topic, and as Andrew, I believe, said, or somebody said, listening is a very important part of the communication process. So you listen carefully. Whenever you hear somebody says, Mr. Table Topics Master, could you please repeat the topic? I'm sorry. Assuming that the Table Topics Master spoke in clearly articulated, acceptable verbiage. If you didn't hear, as far as I'm concerned, you're disqualified. You can always take a guess and, of course, prove that you are disqualified. But you got to listen. And when you hear the topic for the first time, you begin to prepare a line of attack. In a seminar devoted to this kind of thing, I talk about the trigger word. Everything you hear, there will be something in what the topics master says that will trigger something in your mind. What it triggers depends on what is already in your head. The result of your daily holistic preparation, your validated self-confidence, your analytical observation, your clinical evaluation, all of that builds up a reservoir of information, of knowledge that will be ignited by that trigger word when you hear it from the topics master.
Yes, two words.
Impromptu speaking. And after you've heard that, by the time the topics master gives the topic the second time, you are just waiting for them to say, Godfrey McAllister, boom, and you're gone. You don't think about what to say. You finish thinking about what to say when you heard the topic for the first time. Your line of attack is confirmed the second time. And then you go through the processes. And this is not a lecture on that, but you know, if you were in another one of my lectures, then you'll know about this, the way to structure the presentation. The opening, the body, and the close, and what is the opening and what is the close, and what's the body, and how the opening must resemble the close, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Ladies and gentlemen, that is communication effectiveness. And so, I commit to you this journey of focusing on your success. Focus. One singular focus on your success, not my success, not his success, not her success, on your success. Look in the mirror. If you're ugly, you're ugly. If you're handsome, you're handsome. I'm sorry, don't blame me. When I know, but my body was half the size. They used to describe me as a pumpkin on a broomstick. On top of that, I used to stutter. I would say, go away, big head stuttering Mac. That was my reality. I couldn't do anything about my head. Even if I went to a psychiatrist, aka a shrink, they would probably try to shrink my mind, but not my head. The head, the size of the head was the problem. I used to stutter. To cut a long story short, you get the rest in another lecture. I have to forward sell, you see. Cut a long story short. 3 years later, I was what they call the cat's pajama. There were 5 girls who always, we call them, lined together. And each of those 5 girls thought that that one was my girlfriend. And I was just hanging around with the rest because it's a team. My head was still big. I was still stuttering, but I learned the secret. You want to know that secret? You know what I'm going to tell you, right? Come to one of my paid seminars, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, we have actually done it. We have time, about 40 minutes as I make it. The time I will decide for questions and answers. Now, I guarantee you that if you have the question, I have the answer. There is no question that you can ask me for which I don't have an answer. I promise you that. Put me to the test. Mr. Moderator, will you take over?
You can either put your questions in the chat or raise your hand.
The moderator will identify the person since I can't see them.
Yeah. Okay, David Mills, your question.
He wants to be put to the test. What does it take to win a Toastmasters division area or district conference speech?
You're asking me, what does it take to win a district or division conference speech?
Contest speech.
Or contest speech. What it takes?
Yes.
Oh, that's simple. A winner.
How do you be a winner?
I mean, I was being put on test, so I had to make sure I didn't fail the test. Well, okay, fine. I don't know that that's a fair question to be answered in these few minutes, because that's what we're talking about. You begin, first of all, with the desire to be a winner. And then you understand how steep the hill is, what is required. You understand what you are trying to achieve. You evaluate the price, the sacrifice. Decide if you are willing and or able to pay that price. And if you are, then you work at it day and night.
Definitely good point. I know a lot of people who start at least a year in advance for trying to progress through. It's not something that, 2 weeks before the contest, I think I might do this. You might be successful for a certain period of time, but you're not going to be as successful. Okay, do we have another question? What a quiet group.
There's one in the chat there, Heather.
Oh, okay. Why are you called Dr. Perspective?
Very simply, what is the word? My name, my trademark name is Dr. Perspective. So I gave myself that name because as I was evaluating all my speaking experience, the topics in which I speak, etc., I tried to find a common denominator that seemed to tie everything together. And when I looked at all the speeches that I have done covering a wide range of subjects, I realized that if I had to make one contribution in one sentence, I would say to anybody who cares to listen, that the only thing over which you have complete control is your perspective. And so whether the glass is half full or half empty depends entirely on you. It's not something that has any basis in reality. It's your perspective. And you can look at anything in life, any experience in life, and you can say something negative about it or positive. You can see the good in every bad situation, or you can see the bad in every good situation. And you know there are people who do both of them, not at the same time. And so you got to decide which one it is. So your perspective, if you have a well-rooted and founded and grounded appreciation for who you are, I am made in the image and likeness of God. Straight up. That's the base from which I operate. And so that affects my worldview. Now, if you think that you evolved from a monkey, all right, I'm not going to comment on that. That's what you believe. All right. You will have a different worldview. We cannot have the same worldviews if we have those diverse beliefs. So you figure out what your worldview is. That will affect your perspective. And your perspective will affect a lot of other things. There's something called self-fulfilling prophecy. And self-fulfilling prophecy is usually the consequence of a perspective, whether negative or positive. So I trademarked both the name Dr. Perspective and the mantra. The only thing over which you have complete control is your perspective. So both of those are my trademarked names.
Heather, you're on mute.
Yeah, I muted myself because of the noise in the background, and we have one here from Albert. Where did you obtain your doctorate and in what?
Okay, my doctorate was obtained some, 20, 30 years ago. My first degree was a on-land degree. I have a bachelor's in theology and psychology. Then I did a distance learning program in a UK university. And first I did a master's, and that was in theocentric counseling. And then I did one of my first books was the thesis that was used for that. That thesis was the one that I mentioned, You've Got All It Takes to Succeed. Then I did my PhD, and that thesis was winning the war. Jamaica was just being transformed from a controlled, closed economy to an open economy. So we had to, it was difficult. And so I wrote the book basically teaching consumers that they need to empower themselves, that unity is strength, and that whereas providers unite, consumers better unite too and act in unison. If not, you will not be able to control prices, and so on and so on and so on. That was the actual thesis for the PhD. Consumer provider relations. That was the long title.
Heather, you're on mute again.
Thought I unmuted myself, dear. Anyway, so from someone who must have arrived a couple minutes late, but would bear repeating, and what is your mantra?
My mantra is the only thing over which you have complete control is your perspective. You know, we all like to believe that we're in control, right? Oh, yes, that's an illusion. God put manipulation. He built manipulation into our DNA. Does anybody disagree with that? That God built manipulation into our DNA. The only people who will disagree are those who are not parents. But that mother knows. Oh yes, that newborn baby knows exactly how to manipulate her. Baby decides that he's not getting enough attention, and he begins to squawk and baby's not wet, baby's not hungry, baby's not in pain. Baby just wants mommy to pick him up or pick her up. And as soon as mommy does that, the baby stops crying. And when you check the baby eye, dry like a flint. The art of manipulation built into the DNA. And of course, we can fast forward to when we get married. And the man says, I'm the head of the house. And I'll just laugh and leave it at that. Right, women? I'll just laugh and leave it at that.
Okay, we've just got a couple of minutes left here, Godfrey, but we have another question from John Dugan, who says, I'm a very spiritual person. How should I convey that in my real life and work experiences?
You're a very spiritual person. How should you convey that? I believe in being honest. I believe in being truthful. It doesn't mean that you must be boorish. When I'm in audiences that I'm not too sure what the composition is, I do not hide my spirituality, but I make very clear, especially if I'm speaking, I make it very clear that my view is not the only view, and I'm not here to discuss which is the right view. So don't be boorish. People must invite you into their space to have a spiritual or a theological discussion. But certainly do not be ashamed either of your values, because your spiritual values determine who you are. And if you try to pretend that you are who you are not, then you have a problem.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Godfrey, thanks so much for attending. I would love to see you in person. I think there's too much energy to keep it controlled in this little tiny box. We need to see you on the stage and really experience that energy that you have. I think your mantra about the only thing that you have control over is your perspective. And that's so important. You know, I hear too much of, oh, we can't do this or we can't do that. Well, if that's what you believe, you're not going to be able to. Our club can't recruit members because of this, that, or the other thing. You as members have the power to change that perspective and say, we can succeed. We can grow our club and recruit members. And I think Godfrey has expressed that very well today. So I would ask everyone to once again unmute themselves briefly. Let's see those hands. And we're going to give Godfrey another big District 45 round of applause for sharing his perspective with us today. Thank you, Godfrey. One of the things that as a district we do have some control over is recognizing people. We all know that recognizing volunteers